ready to roll? Good evening. No, we're not there yet. So I'll call the meeting to order.
You're looking at me. Okay. Please stand for the pledge.
All right, roll call, please.
Dr. Bellamy,
Present.
Ms. Hill,
Here.
Ms. Walker,
Present.
Mr. Signer,
Here.
Ms. Galvin.
Here.
Okay, so we have a couple proclamations. We have a proclamation and then a couple of announcements.
Yes, this proclamation is for World Refugee Day. Whereas the United Nations General Assembly has designated June 20th as World Refugee Day to commemorate the strength, courage, and perseverance of millions of refugees worldwide. And whereas the International Rescue Committee's mission is to help people whose lives and livelihoods are shattered by conflict and disaster to survive, recover, and gain control of their future. And whereas the International Rescue Committee is entering its 20th year of resettling refugees in Charlottesville, enable those fleeing persecution to resume productive lives in our community. And whereas over the past 20 years, the International Rescue Committee has resettled nearly 4,000 refugees from over 35 countries into the Charlottesville community. And whereas the International Rescue Committee offers a wide range of programs to help refugees and other immigrants throughout the first years of their resettlement to integrate into the local community and achieve economic and social self-sufficiency. And whereas Charlottesville has been enriched by having refugees join our community, increasing the diversity of our citizenry, helping employers find qualified, reliable workers, and founding local businesses. Now therefore be it resolved that we, the City Council of the City of Charlottesville, Virginia, do hereby proclaim Wednesday, June 20th, 2018, as World Refugee Day in Charlottesville and call upon all citizens to acknowledge the contributions of refugees to our community, as well as the good works of the International Rescue Committee in Charlottesville and worldwide in promoting human dignity and helping refugees rebuild their lives in safety and freedom. Signed and sealed the 18th day of June 2018 by our Mayor, Nakaya Walker. I believe we have a couple representatives from the committee.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank you for this and ask that we take this day to recognize the more than 23 million people around the world who have fled their homes and their home countries due to war, violence, and persecution, and think of them in their circumstances right now. And we'd also like to acknowledge the wonderful reception that the city and area of Charlottesville has provided to the refugees that the IRC has resettled over the past 20 years. And thank all of you as well. Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So I have a couple of announcements, Mayor Walker. The first, just to let everyone know that registration is now open for the 2018 Charlottesville Back to School Bash. So for anyone who's interested in receiving a free book bag, if you live in the city or in the county for that matter, you can please go and visit the site on Facebook. Look them up, Charlottesville Back to School Bash, as well as you can send an email to cvillebacktoSchoolBash@gmail.com. Again, just for everyone to know, the pickup is on Saturday, August 18th at 10:30 a.m. at the Sprint Pavilion on the downtown mall. We're still looking for volunteers as well as individuals to post a table if you're interested. So the Back to School Bash will take place Saturday, August 18th at 10:30 a.m. at the Pavilion. And if you need a book bag and or school supplies, please feel free to sign up. All information can be found on Facebook at Cville Back to School Bash or by email, cvillebacktoSchoolBash@gmail.com. If you need further information, you can contact Mr. Pete Arnetta. Secondly, tomorrow, due to a rain cancellation at the last summer barbecue. We're having our summer barbecue tomorrow. So Grace, the gang reduction through active community engagement task force, and local NFL champion Rashad Davis is having a community cookout. So this will take place again tomorrow at 5 p.m. at Tonsler Park. It'll be from 5 to 9. There'll be free food, a kickball tournament, a moon bounce for the kids. There'll be live music, as well as basketball games from the Banks Collage BCBA Men's League. Also, feel free to come out and see that on Sundays. But cookout tomorrow, June 19th at Tonsler Park, starting at 5 o'clock. Everything is free and it's open to the public. If you need a flyer, let me know, or see Mr. Harold Foley in the back.
Yep, mine is gone.
Dang, Harold, you done passed them on? That's all. Thank you.
All right. Any other announcements? All right. So we'll have our city manager response to community matters. Today, we have one of our assistant city managers, Ms. Leslie Beauregard, here to, and she will be giving the response. So thank you for being here with us.
Thank you. So I just have 2 items to share that Mr. Jones asked me to communicate out. One is on a water line project near the Albemarle High School. A question came up at the last meeting regarding this proposed water line. This is a Ravenna Water and Sewer Authority water line. And Bill Moyer, who's the executive director of RWSA, gave a presentation on this recently that included a routing map with it. And several routes are being considered. There are 3 to 4 options around the high school. One along hydraulic to Georgetown, another hydraulic to Lambs Road, and then cross-country to Barracks. And another hydraulic to one side of Albemarle High School, then cross-country to Barracks, and another hydraulic to one side of Albemarle, then to another point on Barracks. That's very confusing. But the bottom line is this. There is a community meeting tomorrow evening that RWSA is hosting at the Albemarle High School cafeteria. That community meeting is from 5:30 to 6:30, and everyone is invited to attend, and I'm sure they'll have lots of maps there and information about this project. The second item is there was a discussion or a comment made about the downtown mall traffic crossing. And typically, the question was how frequently do we close this crossing? We typically do close 4th Street for special activities and events on the mall, including Fridays after 5, all ticketed events at the pavilion, the Downtown Safe Halloween event, and a series of other special events that were required as part of the permit. 2nd Street's not normally closed because, again, that's a free trolley route, but sometimes it is closed and has been for events. We do recognize that more needs to be done, and at the May 21st meeting, staff presented and council approved funding to start phase 1 of a 3-phase approach to making the mall safer for pedestrians. This threat and risk assessment will include a threat profile and a review of both existing and planned security measures for the downtown mall that will then lead to design and construction of any physical modifications that are then called for. So those are my 2 updates, and I'm going to now turn to Ms. Lisa Robertson, who's going to provide an update on Belmont Point.
So I wanted to let you all have some information. A lot of people have been contacting staff members and each of you over particularly the past week or so regarding a pending application seeking permission to do some blasting in connection with the development of property. And I just want to let everyone know, first and foremost, while there is an application that's been filed, we're not on some sort of deadline or arbitrary deadline. The most important thing in that application process is the development of a thorough record and enough information on which to base decisions under the fire code. Second, what this process has emphasized is the importance of making sure that people who are concerned about very serious things that may affect them, their property and their families, is that a lot of people have been calling for a public hearing process. That's not something that's typically undertaken within the fire code process, but one thing that we on staff can do if City Council would like us to is draft an ordinance that sets out some standards In addition to the concerns that are addressed in the fire code, above and beyond those concerns, we can put together an ordinance that could make provisions for a public hearing and that could also provide some helpful direction in terms of what types of information may be useful in allowing everyone to make a decision that is in the best interest of the public safety, make sure that there's no larger public danger presented by the blasting process, and make sure that all of the city utilities that could potentially be impacted are identified and included. So if City Council would like, we can draft an ordinance and put it on your July 2nd agenda and bring it forward, and then we can see how things go from there.
Mayor Walker, I would certainly be very interested in that ordinance.
I would as well.
Okay, we'll put something together and bring it back to you July 2nd. And again, in the meantime, this is not something that happens quickly. The most important thing is to develop the information on which a lot of these decisions get made. So it's a process, but it's not one that's on a timeline that's urgent.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks. All right, boards and commission, Councilor Hill.
Yes, this evening, City Council appointed the following for the CRHA Board: Betsy Rotker and Carolyn Slaughter. And if we have one more, I'm sorry. For the Youth Council, we've appointed Nakira Pathak.
Congrats, Kira.
That's it.
So, a motion,
So moved?
Second?
all right, vote. Okay, carries 5-0. All right, so now it's our community matters. And we'll get started with that. The first person on the list is Elliot Brown.
I'm going to concede my time to Katrina Turner.
Sorry, yep.
All right. Katrina Turner, Charlottesville. Dear City Council, we are the members of the Civilian Review Board. We are honored to begin our hard work providing much-needed public oversight over the Charlottesville Police Department. To that end, we greatly appreciate the efforts of City Council in the development of the board and the selection of its members. However, we remain deeply troubled by aspects of the process by which the City Council made its selections. We are upset that the City Council chose to override the public's overwhelming support for Rosia Parker and Jeff Vogel, excluding them from the board. We wonder why the City Council emphasizes written comments over the popular will, prioritizing the input of certain stakeholders, some of whom we believe live outside of the city of Charlottesville, over the opinions of local communities that are more deeply affected. We are also aware that Denise Lunsford, a stated representative of the Southern States Police Benevolent Association, sent a letter to City Council prior to Council's determination about the makeup of the CRB. We are specifically concerned that the letter was intended to sway council towards crafting a less powerful and forceful board. And finally, although the Civilian Review Board includes many fine and dedicated individuals, with the diversity of views and experiences, we are concerned that the board's current composition fails to directly represent Charlottesville's most economically disadvantaged neighborhoods. On this last point, we are all the more distressed to learn that city council members made certain assumptions, particularly to two of our board members, Gloria Beard and Katrina Turner, representing lower income communities. We realize that there was nothing intentional to these misguided assumptions, but the fact of these assumptions only underscores why this board needs to be more inclusive and representative. We cannot help but to feel that our work has been compromised before it has even begun. It is critical that the public see the Civilian Review Board as legitimate, but the manner of the selection has made that difficult. We fear that there is a perception that City Council has betrayed its promise of an open selection. It is hard for the board to be transparent when its formation fell short of that value. Moreover, we think it is especially unfortunate that the City Council's vote split the way it did, with Nakia Walker and Wes Bellamy staking out the minority position. We believe that this kind of divide somebody else ceding my time.
Yeah, I'm next. I'm ceding my time to Katrina.
Okay. May have undermine public confidence all the more. With transparency in mind, we also want to report that all members of the CRB received a phone call or other communication from Councilor Hill after the board was chosen, expressing her desire that we not resign immediately from the board. We expressly want to state that we see a path forward despite our concerns, but that our desire to serve on the board is not due to Ms. Hill's calls. Although a number of selected members were considering resigning because of the selection process, we decided with the encouragement of Rosia Parker and Jeff Fogel to forge forward. The board members are ready to engage with the challenges to come. We are confident that we are a group that can and will work well and productively together. But before we start drafting bylaws, we need information from the City Council. We need to know whether the City Council has a set sense of the scope of this board's mission and its independence. Over the next year, the board members intend to volunteer substantial amounts of their personal time towards this effort, and we need to know when and whether our efforts will be second-guessed or rejected outright. Simply put, we want more feedback about the perimeters of our work, and we expect that within those perimeters, we will be granted a substantial measure of autonomy and authority. With that, we feel we can fulfill our mission by ensuring accountability and promoting respectful and unbiased treatment. We would like a response from City Council at the next City Council meeting on Monday, July 2nd. Thank you, the members of the Civilian Review Board.
Mayor Walker, I just want to say thank you to the CRB. I think that is much appreciated to get that clear directive from you. I'm very interested in responding, and I will work with my colleagues to do that and make sure that we have a real ongoing communication so that we are not misunderstanding or misconstruing anything. So I really appreciate the fact that you came before us today and that you gave us this in writing. And so at some point, we'll just get in touch with colleagues and we can see about crafting a response. Mm-hmm. So thank you. Thank you. And I'd like to say thank you to Ms. Parker and Mr. Fogel for encouraging the group to stay together.
So I would say, you have,
We still have no low-income person on this board, so that needs to be rectified. So how is this gonna be rectified?
Mayor Walker, the only thing that I can imagine is that we'd have to ask every member who's been appointed for their income level, and then we measure it against the federal poverty levels. Because then that is the only way to get a definitive answer. That's a question.
We have nobody representing the low.
so you're saying housing?
Community.
Housing,
you're-
okay,
That was one of our
okay.
that was one of the main things.
It did say low income, it did not say public housing or any kind of low income housing. That is what the resolution said.
That's how it was reworded, but it was, when this was presented, we stated that we needed somebody from low-income housing, from the projects or whatever. We stated that about this board. I mean, if nobody's living in the low housing to let us know what's going on in the low housing, how are we supposed to know?
So I think that that is definitely something that we could have an answer to by the second. The other part of your question about the answer by the second, I don't think that it's our job to kind of bring a set of parameters for the board to work within. So I would have, I don't think that's what we should do. I think that we should trust the work that you all are going to do over the next year, and when you bring it to us, that we should be ready to accept what you all are presenting versus coming back. And I understand why you're asking for us to make sure that we are not putting you all in the same position as we did last council meeting, but I really don't think that you all should ask us that question, because it's not, we shouldn't be doing that. We should be listening to the work that you all are going to be doing over the next year, and honoring your commitment and research that it's, and what you are saying the needs of the city are. So that's what I would bring back on July 2nd, so I think I can just share that now.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we can have an answer about what to do about the board member that you all are requesting.
I would be interested, Mayor Walker and my colleagues, if the CRB would be interested in have we determined when your first meeting is? Has that been determined yet? Has staff reached out? Okay, so the first thing that I would recommend is one, us finding out when their meeting is scheduled to be, their first meeting is scheduled to be. And if during their initial meeting, if they would like, because you all are responsible for drafting the bylaws for this upcoming board or however.
Yes.
So if you all were to decide to draft a different set of bylaws in regards to specifics for what you want on either this board or the upcoming board, and bringing it back to us in the interim, I would be interested in entertaining that to ensure that we address all of the needs. And that could be addressed either by us on July 2nd, or after you all meet, again, you all bring it back to us within maybe 15 to 30 days. I'm literally just throwing out times. And then we can amend it from that perspective, or we can wait until the next year. But I think that may give us a path to getting where so many, not only of the individuals on the board want us to go, but a lot of people in the community want us to go. And it's your board, so you all should be the ones making the decisions, similar to CRHA and Planning Commission and any other entity that we have.
Yeah.
Is there any reason why at this point that we couldn't consider another member from the list?
In terms of increasing the number of people on the board? Is that, I'm asking, is that true? You said number on the list, what do you mean?
Although Mayor Walker, I think Councilor Bellamy, though, raises a very good point, that it's the bylaws written by the CRB that has been appointed that has that ability to do it, not us.
So we're saying that if they came back next time and wanted to add a member or two to their list, then they are within.
And that's a category.
their-
It's a category. The bylaws would be a category of representation. It's not a particular individual's name.
No, I understand, but they could add any category they wanted to.
Exactly. That's how I
All right.
understand it.
For the future board.
Which we still, I mean,
Well,
we still.
he's saying this board too.
This is the,
Yeah, my suggestion would be because it's their board, if they're saying, so if this board is saying that, well, we can't do the work, we need to add members to it, or we need to look at it in a different way, because it's their board, they should have the autonomy to be able to add how they see fit or change it as they see fit, because it's technically their board.
Well, but we still, the two more, so we still do the appointments as to any board, right? And the two biggest things coming up, I mean, this very, I thought it was excellent comment that you read, gets at the heart of the matter, which is the biggest question ahead is what authorities does this body actually have? And that's gonna be a discussion that begins with the draft of the bylaws. If you look at the other CRBs around Virginia, this has been, like Fairfax County has one with more authority than you might think. There are different ones. So what's gonna happen here is, I think we would be criticized if we constrained in any way what the authorities could be before getting them from the duly appointed members of the CRB. So we're now going to wait for the proposal of the bylaws from the members on there, and then we have a discussion, and we'll look at everything we can in this board with our attorneys, and we'll figure out how to give you the best authority that makes sense. And then we will do that. And then there's this whole other piece about what are the future members of this board like. So this is the beginning of a process. I think we are just about to get to the most important part, which is what are the authorities? What does the board actually do? That'll be spelled out in the bylaws that we approve.
And I guess, Mayor Walker, I think the question for the council, as I read it, is the CRB has specifically said that they want a response from City Council at the next meeting on Monday, July 2nd, and whether we need to put that response together in writing and in a statement. And I would like to use that day to do that.
Okay. But the other question about the member, and particularly a member from the low-income public housing community, right? Is that not something that we?
Well, that is something that strikes me as writing their bylaws.
I don't feel like we're prepared to deal with that on the fly, because
Right.
it's going to, first of all, gets us to an even number of votes, which usually with boards, we try to have an odd number. So that we can look at this before the next meeting, maybe, and think about ideas about how to address it.
All right. Brendan Hassler.
Dang, Brendan, that was a strong clap of support.
I've got good comrades, what can I say? Brendan Hassler, county resident. On June 8th, the justice system doled out yet another serving of prejudiced inequity by sentencing Corey Long to prison when his only crime was defending the city against the white supremacist menace that many of you allowed to engulf us. That night, the community's real defenders, the people who aim to protect the marginalized members of the community instead of exploiting them, took to the streets to protest this travesty. Needless to say, our dearly beloved police force descended, not unlike a biblical plague upon this community's offenders, who demanded the equitable change in the legal and justice system. The cops, perhaps seized by the aggressive spirit of Ares himself, proceeded to arrest 8 members of the community for alleged traffic violations, including some members who were victims of the terrorism of last summer's events. I'm unaware if you've seen the videos from that night, but some of the most distressing moments included the community activists being dragged across the street by police and other members of the community, as well as their lawyers being denied access to the jail in which they were held. The event, at least in my view, serves as an appropriate case study on why we resist the CPD and the long, sightless arm of the law that continues to smother Charlottesville's most vulnerable residents for merely trying to survive. It highlights the double standard with which the CPD treats us as activists. When white nationalists show up with an army, police send a smattering of officers. When a smattering of community activists show up for justice, police send an army of officers. The charges, flimsy as they are, also highlight exactly how the CPD continues to pursue activists for demanding the change that they need to live in peace. The message the CPD sent that night was clear. Demand justice, and we will find any method we can to silence you. It also highlights how the police, the jails, the courts work in tandem to protect each other, all at the expense of queer people, poor people, and people of color. My demand to you, counselors, is simple. For once in your lives, take a stand against the police targeting of activists who've materially done nothing wrong. Do not passively sit in your offices while the defenders are out on the streets going toe-to-toe with the systems that have failed us time and again. Do not consider any new city staff or managers or board members who would not match or exceed the conviction with which the activists of the community have stood up to the demonstrably racist CPD. Because the white nationalist terror that plagued our city last summer was due to your negligence as elected officials, and we're sick of being the ones to handle the fallout. In short, it's your mess. Time for you to start cleaning it up too.
Thank you.
I want to make a response to that. Just as a point out, listen, this is really important because there's a lot of misunderstanding about this. City councilors have no operational role at all in policing decisions like that. We didn't even know about anything having to do with this until the next day, or I didn't. That's just a point of fact. So it's important to understand the form of government we have. It's council manager. The police, the entire police system reports up to the police chief who reports to city manager. So this important to voice this. This is a really important public forum for you to communicate with the public and with the government the issues, but that people have to understand that. So fortunately, our new police chief is here, our deputy city manager is here, but the point of your argument that goes to city councilors, it is not how the government is designed that we have. So the right stakeholders to hear your complaints were here, which is good. But I just have to make that point.
And could I, if you would, sure.
You have power just by being an elected official. Yes. If the police really aren't in your purview, then you lose nothing by deploring these actions. You lose nothing by that. And by the way, I thought that you had the ability, when the city manager's contract comes up for... What's that?
I said he'd be receiving awards for it.
Yeah, receiving... All right. But don't we even
let's stay on
have the
track.
ability to review, like, the next city manager coming up?
Yeah.
Don't we have the ability to view and say, okay, are you going to pursue police injustice with an aggressive force?
Mm-hmm.
If not, why bother making that higher? And just by being in your position, there is an element of power.
That sounds right. That sounds right to me.
Take adulation, but not criticism, am I?
Your first reaction, Mike, was to
So-
defend, not to support.
It was to inform. I think what you just said was a different point, and I took the second point. That actually makes sense to me. But when you're saying to have anything to do with the operational decisions of what happened that week, that's not within the job that we have or the authorities.
The second point he made was literally the first thing he said, was to denounce their actions,
Yes.
like what he asked. That's what he asked you to do, and you immediately were like, oh, that's not our job.
Well, I think if I can share for a second, I think that what is very important to our future regarding this matter, I wasn't there and I didn't know about it until people were in the arresting state. I was on the phone with a couple of people and was checking to make sure that individuals were released and that people were safe, that Star wasn't re-injured. So I understand where you all are coming from. I am there with you. I think what moving forward that you said was most important is that we set the tone, which is what you're asking, for how we move forward and what will happen from this day or forward. Hopefully, with the hiring decisions that we make in the future and that the one that we've made with our new police chief, that we will have some consistency in response, and we will have response where community members don't feel like they are battling with the police force that is supposed to protect and serve. So I understand what you're saying, and moving forward, that is the hope. So again, it didn't happen. A lot of people feel last week, right? And moving forward, that is hopefully what will happen, and that we will have someone to answer the questions, because the decision that was made last Friday, there is no point person, because I've been asking. And so we need to make sure that in the future, and since our police chief was sworn in today, moving forward, starting today, we can ask. We have a point person to ask those questions.
I think while we have a couple of other seconds remaining, when we talk about accountability and hearing from different members of the community, right? I asked during the last meeting if we could get an update in regards to hearing specifically from Delegate Toscano as well as the General Assembly in regards to what we need to do about the strong mayor. So again, when we talk as we continuously hear about just accountability, people want someone to talk to. Mrs. Bogart, if we could please make sure we speak to City Manager Jones about the proper steps, and if we could have a report out in regards to what needs to happen, so that we can bring that information to the community, specifically members of the public, and let them decide, or my goal or my wish would be for them to decide which route they would like to go. But I think we've heard from several people, including past and former mayors, about it.
Mm-hmm. All right. Okay. Don Gathers.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'd like to, first of all, piggyback the previous speaker. And Chief Brackney, I'm glad that you're here. It needs to be pointed out that, and it wasn't said, but those 8 arrests amounted to, they were charged with what amounts to jaywalking. So when in the history of mankind has a paddy wagon been called for, members thrown in the paddy wagon and hauled before a magistrate to jail for jaywalking? And there was the one activist in the wheelchair who I imagine was arrested for jay-rolling, who they actually called an ambulance for to haul her to jail because they didn't know exactly what to do with the wheelchair. I understand that it doesn't fall directly under your purview, but the community needs some response to that. And we need to know why it happened. And we need to know that it would never happen again. Just a few other things for your listening edification. Please, I'm going to ask you tonight, begin the process to enact some sort of legislation that would bar the carrying of handguns in this chamber. The members of the city have been traumatized and terrorized enough, and they don't need to come to these public meetings and have people openly carrying, especially when they're of an ilk that people here don't trust necessarily anyway. So if you would please see what process that, and I'm glad that we have a stand-in for Mr. Jones. I'm glad that Ms. Robertson is here, but please see what the process may be to enact whatever legislation that we can, so that we can deny and bar that ever happening again in the future. I also ask you to please consider voting down the Monticello Dairy project. 20 affordable units for 10 years doesn't even begin to come close to the needs of the city or its citizens or the the affordable housing needs. Nor does it set the affordable mark, nor does it help setting the affordable mark being at 80% AMI. Seemingly, the elections and appointments for the CRB were hijacked and influenced by outside forces such as the Southern States Police Benevolent Association, an organization that, to my understanding, has no members in the city of Charlottesville whatsoever. Sounds a lot like Russia in the U.S. presidential election to me. I would urge you to add, or allow us to add, 2 more members to the CRB. We need free reign for the CRB. We need it free from council oversight, and please make no attempts to compromise or control the work of the CRB. We also need to know what plans, if any, that the city has laid forth and it has in place for August 11th and 12th this coming year. We're a month and a half away from the potential of having Nazis march through our street terrorizing their citizens again. We need to know what plans are already in place, if any, and if not, what groundwork will be laid ahead. And please, I've asked previous councils, I'll ask this one, please do away with that ridiculous Pledge of Allegiance at the beginning of these proceedings. Please.
Well, Mr. Gathers, if you may, so help me understand in regards to legislation about gun permit or people being allowed to carry here in Chambers. So we went to the state to talk about that, and it was like the legislation that we proposed didn't even get out of the committee. Both myself and Ms. Galvin testified. So I mean, what else would you? And I'm not being combative. I'm trying to find other solutions. So I mean, what else would you like for us to do?
Well, when was that done? Because I'm not aware of it. And
that was just
It was last
literally-
November.
I'm sorry?
November.
Well, we actually went there in January, but we submitted our legislative request to the General Assembly, and we do that every November.
Okay.
And we will do that again.
And
We
did
will
that
do it again.
specifically include carrying weapons
Yes.
in the council chambers?
Yes.
Because I know other localities have barred them.
Not
So-
in Virginia.
We
Not in
asked
Virginia,
that we
huh?
bar the weapons in public spaces.
Not in Virginia.
Okay, public spaces, that's a broad
This is
thing.
the- yeah,
That's a
but this
broad
is the
brush.
council chamber.
So I'm thinking that if you go specifically, and maybe you can help here with this, Ms. Robertson, if you go specifically for this public space,
we have. Well, go ahead.
But no,
council
points well taken.
chambers specifically is what I'm speaking of. Because she just said public spaces, which could mean the parks.
No, that public spaces includes, but I'm not the attorney. I'll let Ms. Robertson
We
speak, but
drafted it
did-
in a way that would have allowed us to deal with things in council chambers, and it's my understanding that this year was the first year that these subcommittee meetings were video recorded. If I can find the recording, I'm happy to share it with you. It was quite
appreciate that.
embarrassing, the treatment that we received for these requests. We'll keep
Well, what's
trying.
even more embarrassing,
We'll keep
and I
trying.
count him as a friend of mine, but what's even more embarrassing is that Delegate Toscano did not even assemble the folks of Charlottesville to go to Richmond to stand in protest of these blatantly racist laws that we have in place. And the fact that we couldn't even get them to get it out of subcommittee about carrying weapons in the same parks that children go and play in. We needed a show of force there at the General Assembly.
So maybe,
The NRA and excuse me, the Republicans had their people in place.
We did.
We
also.
did not.
Well, we did. They may not. People didn't come. It may not have been people specifically from Charlottesville, but
well, I
there
think
was
that's
a
what
large
he's asking.
contingent.
We can do
No, I
a better
agree.
job.
And
of
after
there was a
what
large
we went through in
contingent of people-
August, it should have been.
Excuse me. I think this year, going forward, we can say when we are going, that we can make sure we make that announcement so that people
Absolutely.
who want to travel with us can
Thank you.
travel.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. And Mayor Walker, if I may, and I do believe we just got an email from Paige Rice about that there will be community meetings around town to discuss the plans for August 11 and 12. Can you give any update on that? And that's in response to Mr. Gaithers, or Mr. Wheeler, yes.
Hi.
Gat, I'm sorry. I'm from New England. It still comes out every so often. Yep, it is. It is.
Brian Wheeler, Director of Communications.
Maurice Jones has asked me to help start scheduling those meetings. We've scheduled one. We've had a briefing with Congregation Beth Israel, and we sent council an update on that. That took place last week. We've got other meetings in the works with the business community. We're doing a large employer briefing, and we're going to do a larger public briefing of any downtown business owners that want to participate. And then we'll also be scheduling ones for citizens to participate in. What we will share is a lot of the information that Maurice Jones provided council and the public on May 21st in his presentation, and then we'll update folks on where we are with the planning. So a lot of that information has been, at this point, in front of council in your meetings and updates, and then we're ready to start moving that out to the community. We do have a website that's available. If you go to charlottesville.org/resiliencyville, that's the website where we're going to be posting all of this information.
Thank you very much.
All right. All right. David Katz.
Thank you, Mayor Walker and members of the council. My name is David Katz, and I live at 1012B Druid Avenue in Belmont, immediately next to and above the Belmont Point construction site. Thank you particularly to Councilor Galvin and members of the Neighborhood Development Services staff for your attention to our concerns about the plan to blast rock at the Belmont Point construction site. Thank you, too, to those residents now standing and owners near the construction site who have taken their time to be here tonight. I am here to request that the City Council direct the Fire Marshal to delay the review of the blasting permit application and to not issue a permit before public hearings can be held about this plan and before a thorough analysis of the alternatives can be performed. Let's pause and talk about this outrageous plan before it's too late. And there are several reasons why I think that it's crucial. First, we believe that the permit applicant has not complied with the Virginia Administrative Code, Section 4 VAC 25-130-816.62, Use of Explosives Pre-Blasting Survey. This applicant did not notify residents or owners within half a mile of the permit area as required by the Virginia Administrative Code. We talked to residents within 500 feet of the permit area on Druid Avenue, Meridian Street, Stonehenge Avenue, Rockland Avenue, and Quarry Road, and Palatine Road, and most had not received notification. Several of them signed a petition asking that this permit review and issuance be delayed. Residents and owners who have had the pre-blast survey were told that they could not receive a copy of the survey report for their own property, again in violation of this section of the VAC. We have been told that the permittee will not make the blast records available for public inspection in violation of Section 816.68, Use of Explosives, Records of Blasting Operations. Affected parties include not only property owners and residents, but also those who use Quarry Park, including the Charlottesville Albemarle Little League and the Ravenna Trail Foundation. This builder is asking the nearby property owners and residents to assume the risk of damage to their homes, their health, and their safety without any part of the benefits of the development. There is a high probability of damage to our property and property values, all in the name of extra profit for the builder. Why should the existing homeowners and residents be forced to assume the risk of damage to their property if the builder failed to perform proper due diligence before beginning this construction? This drastic revision to the PUD, as granted, should reopen it for reevaluation and require public hearings on the revisions and review and approval by City Council. No public meetings have been scheduled or mentioned by the Fire Marshal. If the builder claims that they did not know about the subterranean rock, what would one expect to find on a street called Quarry Road? Let's pause and talk about this plan in public to reach a reasonable solution for all residents and others who live, work, and play in this area. There are several possible alternatives to blasting, only one of which was discussed I hear by the fire marshal, let's pause and talk about other alternatives to blasting. For example, why not construct smaller homes on the bedrock and as affordable housing in this otherwise market rate development? In conclusion, we request that the City Council direct the fire marshal to not issue a permit for this blasting until public hearings can be held to discuss the alternatives. Let's pause and talk about this plan and its impact on nearby owners and residents and others who live, work, and play in the area.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know before you leave, sir, I know several of us have had conversations, and I spoke with the fire marshal about this today. I don't know if it would be appropriate for him to touch on it now. Could we call the fire marshal up now for him to offer some remarks? I know that the city has put out a statement, but I mean, he's here. And that's what this
And we will be having an ordinance to give us the authority to have a public hearing on this.
Right, but I mean, being that this portion of the meeting was for response, and he's here, and there's a lot of people who want to hear about this specific issue. Would it be within the realm for him to come up and respond in some regards?
Hello.
Nice to meet you.
How are you?
Nice to meet you.
Talk to you on the phone.
Yes, sir.
Query World.
So, I guess the first thing I need to start off with, I do have a permit in hand for the blasting. There's a lot of research that needs to be done in order for that permit to be approved. And I have as many questions as you guys do. So, there's a process to go through to approve that permit, and there's a lot of research that we need to do. Some of your questions I can't answer, as whether we can put houses on bedrock, and that's something that would be outside of my purview. But those are all great questions that I think they need to be addressed. But how we go about it, I think, is kind of where we are right now. What do we do about that, and how do we move that process forward? Some of you have said that this is unprecedented, the size of blasting that this rock is, which I totally agree with. So it is necessary for us to pay attention to what we're doing and the impact it's going to have on that area and everybody around that area. So I'm sorry, at this point, it's just a permit, it's just a piece of paper. They're asking for the ability to go forward, but there's a lot of questions that have to be answered.
And what we're hoping is that we don't have a repetition of what happened up at the airport in 2013, and before that at the 250 bypass. You know, people who don't learn from their mistakes are doomed to repeat them. Let's not repeat those same mistakes.
Thank you. All right.
So did he answer? Oh. Well, I mean, it's like 20 people.
But I think we have committed that.
Just let it. Say that again, Mr. Gathers. I've been told we need a permit. I've been told that we have to continue on, so thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Where can we get that permit, Mr. Gathers?
Pat Napoleon.
Good evening. My name is Patricia Spicer Napoleon. I live at 700 Lyons Avenue in Charlottesville, and I'm a retired school teacher. I was born in Charlottesville, and my family has deep roots in this community. Tonight I speak to you as a leader of Rise Charlottesville, a nonpartisan grassroots community effort intent on restoring a good name and good governance to Charlottesville. RISE stands for Restoration, Integrity, Sustainability, and Equality. RISE was founded in response to the tragic events of last August 12th that brought more damage to Charlottesville than at any time in our city's history. On August 12th, 3 people died, including 2 Virginia State troopers who fell to their deaths while protecting the health and safety of Charlottesville. Many others were hurt. 3 of you sitting here were a big part of those tragic events that were preventable. Michael Signer, Kathy Galvin, and Wes Bellamy, every one of you failed those you were elected to serve, and you have brought shame to our once well-respected city of Charlottesville, Virginia. Your own personal baggage is a drain on the governmental body of City Council itself, while your baggage is also a drain on productivity and healing. It is time for you to leave City Council and Rise is collecting signatures to recall you from office. So far, we have collected over 1,500 signatures. Those who have signed are a cross-section of folks who are fed up with what you have done to our city. Damage to Charlottesville's reputation, negative financial impact, ongoing lack of fairness and transparency, a declining quality of life. The outcome of your time on council has been chaos, disorder, and death. Last week, we learned of Judge Moore's decision containing the very same Code of Virginia, which we first referenced in Rise. Charlottesville deserves far better than your severely skewed priorities and bad decisions. That is why Rise Charlottesville, along with many others, call for your resignations, or if you will not step down, your removal. On a positive note, there is always hope. There are many good people in Charlottesville. Yet in order to heal, 3 councilors must be held accountable for acknowledging personal responsibility for ongoing failure with accompanying damage. The insincere, non-transparent game playing with knee-jerk governance must end. Lastly, there is a position of leadership. You must yourselves follow the law. Then and only then can the community once and again rise together. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
One of those things is that is extremely, and you come back, because I want you to hear this. If you don't mind, do you mind coming back? Yes. Well, we've been having responses to the public, and I think you deserve a response. So, you made several points, right? And one of the ones in which I feel is absolutely repulsive is the fact that you believe that an event like August 12th, which was indeed very sad, traumatizing to our community, and you say that it's the worst thing to ever happen here in Charlottesville when you think about the fact that there were people who were literally sold here, ripped apart from their families as slaves. You think about the fact that there was, as we're commemorating a person who was lynched, and multiple people for that matter, who was, may I finish? Thank you. There was an individual who was literally lynched here in the city, right, in the area, if that's how you want to consider it. And then third, when you think about the economic inequities that have taken place for such a very long period, the educational inequities that have taken place for an extremely long period, the criminal acts that have literally taken place at the hands of not only people who represent these systems, but those who have also perpetuated these same systems that have kept a large amount of people who are from here just like you, who have roots here just like you, behind. You place those individuals, and you essentially, when you come and make assertions that that this is all our fault, and not the long history that has taken place here, that essentially everything that happened was a byproduct of our decisions, and not the byproduct of, I'm talking.
Well,
I'm talking. So what you need to do is listen. God gave you 2 ears.
You've been inappropriate.
So you already spoke. So furthermore, when you make assertions like that, it's very disrespectful, and you take away all of your potential credibility because you set aside everything that's transpired before. And the only thing that you choose to look at is the actions from not only August 12th or the actions from the council last year.
I'm talking about August 12th. I'm talking about your role and the other.
And I'm speaking about the role of us waking the community up. I've stated my time is up. Thank you, Ms. Walker.
All right, thank you.
Are you saying that we're responsible?
The time's up.
Wait,
We're asking
please.
for the next person.
Wait.
I have to tell you that I'm repulsed by your accusation. I taught children for 30 years. I held children of all races on my lap. And I do not approve of anything that went on during the slavery times. I was not here then. And you tried to turn it around.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just so that everybody understands.
Please wait.
They don't want to know the truth.
Thank you. We got it. I was trying to tell them. Okay, William Atwood. William Atwood,
She spoke about the two states.
Excuse me.
She didn't make no mention about Heather Hyde. And she wanted to blame the three of you all who sit there, and maybe there does need to be some level of blame. But she placed no blame whatsoever on the Nazis who came here and created that.
It's our fault.
Okay.
For you to say that and put the blame directly here and not on the Nazis, that's
Just a second.
Came with the guns. They're the ones that came with the swords. They're the ones that came with the shields to kill people like you.
Wow. And if you were there, they wouldn't have cared what color you were.
They'd have thrown the bottles of urine at you.
All right.
Wow.
Sat kids on my
You can
lap.
laugh at the
30
one
years.
but it's very serious.
All right, we're starting.
And if you don't acknowledge the guilt of the people that came into this city, then you're as much of a problem as what you say you want to get rid of. No, there's no whataboutism, there's no other side. It's either if you're going to condemn them, you need to condemn the other. If not, your valid point is invalid and you need to leave this chamber. Goodbye, Felicia.
So William Atwood, thank you. So we're starting. All right. We're starting. All right.
Good evening, my name is William Atwood. As I did 2 years ago, I rose to speak about working people in Charlottesville. Now, it has not gotten much better, but there are still many people in the city that get up every morning with their ears ringing because they can't make the nut, they can't make the living. They have 2 jobs, they have 3 through the university, many of them have 2, and that situation's got to change. Now, one way I think we could actually assist these people now is take a hard look at the last bastion of Jim Crow, zoning. Zoning does not work. The word belongs on an airline ticket, not people's lives. Housing is not a zoning category. It's an absolute goal. There's nowhere in this town that you can say that housing doesn't really belong. I mean, we built housing right on the railroad tracks. We build them everywhere. And essentially, people that can afford those housing generally are workforce housing. I would never mention, you won't hear it out of my mouth, luxury condominiums. But if you start as a base of workforce housing, you can easily ingest into the concept affordable housing. And we've done it. We did it on Little Fifth Street. And essentially, people will work and live together. The problem is this. The scapegoat of land costing too much is an old joke. Land in this city is used in such an adverse way that there's not enough space to provide various housing. Zoning's out of date. The next big design issue in architecture and urban planning is to rethink zoning. On Little Fifth Street, they wanted a 24-foot driveway at my property onto a 15-foot street. That's crazy. So we've got to take our city, inventory our city, take a look at where people want to live and see if it can work. And no more affordable housing funds. People need to be in every project everywhere. We're not that big. And you know something? We are that smart. We can do better. Thanks.
Thank you.
Albemarle County. The extreme lack of leadership and accountability with respect to the events of last summer, July 8th and August 11th, 12th, and the unmistakable recognition that this country and this city are at a unique point in history, grappling with its past and present arc of injustice, helped to catapult Nakia Walker to place first in the 2017 election. It also helped this council see the writing on the wall that Nakia was the only person capable of leading the city out of the rubble by unmasking the illusion that everything's fine and that this city is working. People have talked about this needed change using different words, but they all amount to sentiments expressed by council itself on the night that you chose her as mayor, when you selected her and said the city needs to heal and move forward in a positive direction. The city needs to fundamentally change the way it does business. The city wants to forge a new identity. The city wants to turn the page. But as we saw in the Civilian Review Board vote, this council manager, i.e. this weak mayor system of government, cannot get us where we want to go. The council manager structure reduces Nakia's vision down to one voice in five, and the system itself fractures her authority, slows decision-making, and skirts broader needs for accountability and ownership. It's been tossed around for years, but it is critical at this juncture that a strong mayor, these are the terms they use, but meaning a mayor and council ballot initiative be brought to the vote of the people through a special election. It is critical for accountability and change management that we have an elected chief executive who is empowered to make decisions and handle implementation of policies set forth by council. Without going into great detail, I'd like to propose that Charlottesville do what other cities its size have consistently been moving towards. They're moving away from council manager, i.e. weak mayors, and into a mayor-council form of government that does away with the city manager and replaces it with the mayor that can concentrate on policy development and political leadership. This is increasingly being accomplished by the addition of a new professional position called Chief Administrative Officer, housed under the mayor, reporting directly to the mayor. This position of Chief Administrative Officer assists the mayor with administrative and policy-related responsibilities, generally things such as budget preparation, personnel administration, and daily supervision of overall city business, and frees her, in this case, from the minutia of administrative details. I propose moving forward immediately with a strong mayor ballot initiative.
Sharon Sinclair. Hey.
Good evening. My name is Sharon Sinclair, and I'm a resident of Charlottesville City and a proud homeowner. I read an article in the Daily Progress this morning about the city's housing need assessment, which you will hear a review about from the city staff later tonight. First, I want to thank you for supporting this important study. The report confirms what we already always known. There isn't enough affordable housing in the city, not even close. And that there are thousands of hardworking, low-wealth families that are struggling to make ends meet because they are putting way too much of their hard-earned income into keeping a roof over their heads. But before you hear the city's review, I want to take a moment to describe to you the feelings and impact that home ownership has had on me personally. I am a single mother of two beautiful children whom I would move heaven and earth for. I also have the honor of having my twin sister, who has special needs, living with me. I work very hard and have always kept employment. My inability to go to a bank and get a traditional loan to purchase a home for my family has nothing to do with me not trying hard enough or working hard enough. I just don't make the amount of money or have the sparkling credit that would be necessary for a traditional bank to give me a house loan. The article in the Daily Progress quoted the city's housing coordinator as saying that the city needs to shift funding away from homeownership and towards rentals, and she said the following, and I quote, There's nothing wrong with home ownership, but it can take a while for families at 30% or 40% IMA to reach a level where they can become homeowners. In the meantime, they need somewhere where they can afford to live so they can put away money for a modest down payment. Well, that would be true if Habitat for Humanity of Greater Charlottesville didn't exist. Those families between 30 and 40% AMI who are not ready for home ownership, she's talking about me and the dozens of other hardworking, low-wealth families that Habitat helps each year. When I was approved for home ownership, my income was at 35% AMI. I'm in the group of people that the housing report shows needs the most help with housing. And let me remind you that the new affordable rentals available for people at 50 to 60% AMI would forever be out of my reach. Well, that would be, Habitat was the only way that I was ever going to give my family the stability and security of a permanent home. A home that I own, a home that allows my family to gain equity and that helps us build a better future. We need more rentals in the city, no doubt about that. But turning the city's attention solely to building affordable rentals and pulling away from home ownership programs like Habitat for Humanity would be a huge mistake. Living in a rental doesn't build equity. It doesn't build security. It doesn't build pride in your home or in your community. My children know that the house that we live in is their home. We know that we won't be surprised by a 30-day eviction with no notice, which has happened. My children know that we will be able to stay in our neighborhood schools until they graduate. We know that our housing costs aren't going to suddenly hike because there's others willing to and who can pay more. We know that our house can't be bulldozed and turned into a shopping mall and an apartment building without me allowing it. I own it, I pay the mortgage, my name is on the deed. Yes, like anything worthwhile, the Habitat program does take time. It also takes a lot of hard work and dedication on the part of the home buyer going through the program. It took about 1.5 years for me to be able to move into my home. I was required to give 300 hours of sweat equity towards the building of my house and the homes of fellow partner families. I believe so strongly in what I was doing and the opportunity that was given to me through Habitat for Humanity that I gave 1,000 hours while working full-time and being a single parent. I have the pride of knowing that I helped put up the walls. I helped build my home. That's the legacy of pride that I pass to my children. My hard work and the Habitat program made this happen. I could spend my whole life paying rent, but I wouldn't feel the same sense of pride that I do now. I would have nothing really to show for it, just receipts that I paid a landlord. I would be forever under the fear that I could be evicted, and that's so much scarier when all you want for your children is a safe and secure place. There is a need for the families in Charlottesville to have a place to call home. We need to invest in affordable housing in the city, but please don't close the door on affordable home ownership. We all know the old adage, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. In closing, give a man an affordable rental, he'll have a roof over his head. Walk a man through home ownership and they'll forever have a place to call home. Thank you.
Ben?
Ben Doherty, Charlottesville. Mayor Walker and city councilors last week revealed yet another wrong-headed preliminary decision against the city by Judge Moore in the Confederate Statues litigation. I want to emphasize that these negative decisions by Judge Moore are despite the best efforts of City Attorney Lisa Robertson, who has made very strong arguments both demonstrating why Virginia's War Memorials Law does not apply to Charlottesville's Confederate statues, and also in favor of the immunity of individual city councilors in voting to remove those statues. Demonstrating his own implicit bias, Judge Moore has ignored her arguments, deciding against the city in both instances despite little legal support for his decisions. While the case moves to trial in October, Judge Moore has already signaled his predisposition that the city will lose, and this case will ultimately land before the Virginia Supreme Court. At that point, the case will not only have statewide, but also national implications for cities around the country that also want to be able to remove racist monuments from their midst and define their own public spaces. It is important, then, that the city be ready for what will be an important decision from the Virginia Supreme Court and begin setting themselves up now for a victory on appeal. On May 9th, City Council passed a resolution empowering the city attorney to hire a pro bono counsel for just this type of litigation. If you've not done so already, you should start doing that now. Start bringing in a major law firm that can help the city up now to succeed before the Virginia Supreme Court in the statute's case. Ms. Robertson has done an excellent job in her arguments before Judge Moore, and considering the national attention and importance this case will have, there are no doubt several law firms that would want to assist her on a pro bono basis in setting things up for appeal. This should include developing the record at trial and presenting expert witnesses to contrast with the witnesses already being used by the Monument Fund to bolster their own case. The firm of Zunka, Milner, and Carter, which is currently assisting Ms. Robertson in the case, is insufficient. They are an insurance defense firm who have little expertise with the issues in the case and little actual interest in winning. Their primary focus is keeping down costs for the insurance company that hired them. They're staffed by a group of mostly conservative right-wing attorneys who personally would probably just as soon see the racist statues stay in place. Instead, the city should take advantage of the May 9 resolution from City Council and hire a pro bono law firm that can do justice to the importance of this case and help set Ms. Robertson and the city up to win once it reaches the Virginia Supreme Court. Thank you.
Thank you. Peter Lovegrove.
Good evening, Mayor Walker, everybody. I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Peter Lovegrove. I'm a resident of Belmont on Palatine Avenue, and I'd like to express my concerns, add to the conversation around the blasting at Belmont Point. I'm actually going to read a statement from James Kelly, who is he lives over the road from me, and he couldn't be here today. James is obviously a resident of Belmont, and both he and I are within 500 feet of the blast zone of influence. He has concerns about the blasting that's being planned, and I'd like to go through some of the specifics of his concerns, and he has some suggestions about ameliorating some of the long-term consequences. As most you may know, most Belmont homes are up to 70 years old, and a large number, if not most, of the foundation of these homes were built using old-style cinder blocks, not concrete blocks, but cinder blocks. And these are porous, susceptible to moisture over time, and at this point could be very fragile. So ground vibrations could cause these cinder blocks to crack. In addition to the above ground structure issues, Belmont was sewered extensively using terracotta clay pipes, which are now 80 plus years old. At this point in their lifespan, these terracotta clay pipe are likely fragile and again, very susceptible to ground vibrations. If vibrations from blasting causes old clay pipes to break or crack, the resultant consequences of a pipe collapse at a later date may not be seen or even found for many years. In James's experience in the construction industry, there are almost always reasonable alternatives to blasting, as somebody else has always mentioned. Blasting is usually the cheaper and faster way of dealing with subsurface rock, but it's also the riskiest. And we as residents are being asked to take on that risk without having been consulted. I wasn't notified of this blasting. The first thing I heard about it was on an online community forum. The short and incomplete notice to the public caught all of us, or many of us, by surprise with no opportunity to ask reasonable questions. We request, and it sounds like a movement is being made in this direction, that the blasting be put on hold, hopefully until there's sufficient time for public meeting for us to ask our questions. If the contractor is ultimately allowed to perform this level of blasting in this susceptible and diverse community, it sounds like it will be to a large extent and for a long period of time. The city should require extensive interior and exterior photographs and video of adjacent and potentially affected homes and structures. The documentation should be made available to the city and the homeowners for their protection, rather than exclusively for the protection of the developer. The city should also insist on a reasonable bond against undiscovered latent damage to the city and the residential property of this community for a reasonable period of time. Thank you.
Thank you. So Annie Stoop.
Hello, my name is Annie Stupp. I am a resident of the city. So thank you, first of all, Council, for commissioning this housing needs assessment, which just came out. This is definitely a step in the right direction to address the affordable housing shortage. But please keep in mind as you review it, I find that this report largely leaves out affordable homeownership, as Sharon has just described, as a tool for wealth building and economic mobility for historically marginalized communities. And as Sharon explained so beautifully, we need more home ownership across the income spectrum, but especially for low-income families. We need to financially empower families like Sharon's. We need to push back against gentrification, displacement, and racist lending practices. So I find it troubling that in this report, while it's a very good starting point and contains a lot of fantastic research, it might lead the city to focus on developing rentals, such as through tax credits, which have only 15-year affordability periods. This is really short-sighted, and it perpetuates the racial wealth gap that exists here in Charlottesville and throughout the country, but especially here. And so, of course, we need housing solutions that meet all needs. We need deeply affordable rentals, home ownership preservation and repair, badly needed rehab of public housing units, transitional housing for the homeless, and, of course, affordable home ownership. And with that, I'm going to cede my time to Dan Rosenzweig. Thank you.
Dan Rosenzweig, 740 Lexington Avenue, and I'm not going to say too much other than to point out something else that the study left out. I do find it was a very robust study, especially insofar as it does a market survey or a market analysis of low-income housing tax credits, which is one tool in the toolbox, but I think opposite of what seemed to be implied in the newspaper this morning, it's not the only tool. And here's why. Our patterns of racial and economic segregation in this town are not de facto. That is, they're not naturally occurring. 100 years ago, our neighborhoods were more or less integrated because people lived near where they worked and they walked to work. It was only after the federal government in the 1930s created public housing that they decided to segregate our housing. They created black public housing and white public housing. Following on behind that, the FHA was created to lend money, basically to backstop loans to big developers like Levitt and others who built large suburban subdivisions to build housing, home ownership housing. Well, guess what? It was all deed restricted. The FHA would not backstop a single loan to a builder who didn't have a racial deed restriction. Look in this community, go to the courthouse, pull deeds. Much of the city is covered by racial deed restrictions. It's not a coincidence that we have patterns of segregation. Now here's some stats that the assessment left out. African Americans in this country earn 60% relative to all other groups. But here's the even more shocking stat. African Americans hold 10% of the wealth relative to everybody else. Why? Because of federal housing policy that eliminated African Americans from home ownership for more than 70 years in this country. That is why we need to continue to invest in affordable home ownership. It's not just a roof, it's about equity and a future and stability and allowing people to get into the game and become part of the American middle class or even above that. So I would ask you, please look at this study carefully, pay attention to what's in it, especially as it regards the geography of segregation and affordable housing in this town. And please, please continue to prioritize affordable home ownership. It is the best anti-poverty program in this nation's history.
Good evening. My name is Emily Dreyfus, and I'm here on behalf of the Charlottesville Low Income Housing Coalition, CLIC. The April 4th housing report that's coming up on your agenda tonight shows a lot of need, as you've just heard. We unsuccessfully attempted to work with neighborhood development to help expand the scope of the needs assessment because one of the most critical issues associated with the housing shortage is the impact of race. The racist policies enacted by prior city councils, the federal policies that you just heard referenced, and the continuing impact of anti-black zoning in our city must be remedied. The report looked at the cost of housing and found a minimum wage worker would need to work 147 hours per week in order to afford to live here. That leaves a paltry 3 hours a day for the rest of life. CLIC is finishing a report about the impacts of local racism on affordable housing and the human suffering caused by this issue. And the report will be on our website, hopefully within the next couple of weeks. Our website is www.affordablehousingcville.org. Over half of the numbers of units that this report found are specifically needed for people under 30% of the AMI, the area median income. We need a comprehensive strategy to stop displacement and create more housing, both homeownership and rental. And we need that housing strategy before the comp plan is adopted. We're confident that the recommendations that we will share will provide tools, and we need those tools to be enacted quickly. The involvement of the people who are most affected is critical to that process. Thank you, and we look forward to talking about this more in the future.
Thank you. Laura Horn.
Hi, I'm Laura Horn, 202 Douglas Avenue. I'm here tonight because Riverbend Development has filed a plan to build in downtown Belmont 4 four-story buildings, 138 residents, 27,000 square feet of office and retail space, generating an estimated 918 additional daily car trips. So if you've been to our neighborhood, you know that our charming Belmont has narrow streets. Some are functionally one lane because a lot of our homeowners and businesses use on-street parking, so we sort of take turns. Our sidewalks are narrow. There aren't a lot of crosswalks. There aren't a lot of bike lanes. Our sewer capacity is limited and stressed, partly because of our great restaurants. But we're served by Clark Elementary School, whose capacity isn't easily expanded. Our bus is number 3, and it runs every half hour. So this isn't the development that many of us would have chosen for our neighborhood. And if it is to be built by right, in spite of its size and scale, then we'll certainly be back here to talk with you about getting the city's help in accommodating it with our modest infrastructure. But that is not the expected case. The developer filed a by right plan as a placeholder, very sensibly anticipating that a new comp plan would permit lower density in Belmont. And the stated plan is to request special use permits and a land swap with the city, both to increase the density of the project. So we know there'll be a process to discuss special use permits, and we'll certainly take advantage of that. But a land swap can be done by city council. You know, the city owns the land. You can sell it or trade it. So we're here to, and that can be done without a public process, is our understanding. So we're here tonight to ask you very respectfully to assure us that you won't approve a land swap with Riverbend for the Belmont Apartments to increase that density. And we thank you for your consideration, and also thank you to council and city staff who have been so informative and helpful and professional. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just had a question. I thought that when this topic came up before that we determined that that land swap was no longer in scope for this project.
It just hasn't gone anywhere.
Oh, okay.
So there's been...
They have not approached us about that land swap.
Not lately, no.
And if I may, Mayor Walker, when this came up about 2 years ago, or the summer before last, I believe I had a meeting with several staff, as I recall, and we could possibly make a condition of any kind of land swap be conditioned upon engagement with the community in the form of a charrette so that the community can be participating in the design and planning of the area. But that was something that, as I understood, could be a condition. We could place conditions on any kind of a swap.
So anytime you transfer land that you own, you can negotiate what the terms of that transfer are. So that's
And also
something
with
that could be
affordable housing.
discussed. Yeah.
Because this was not an affordable housing apartment development.
Sorry.
Hi, I'm Luis Oyola, Charlottesville. So last year, around this exact time, council was presented with evidence about plans for violence on August 12th, as investigated by Charlottesville residents like Emily Gorchensky. Very little, if at all, was done with that information by the city, leaving residents to figure out ways to defend themselves. Some of these residents are now facing state persecution or jail time for making this inevitable choice to defend our city. Tonight, you get more evidence of more violence planned for Kessler's quote-unquote anniversary rally on August 12, 2018, the permit for which will soon be on trial on federal court, as I hope y'all are aware. The document shows a public Facebook poll started by so-called Ludovici Alibi, an obviously fake name, who is friends with Kessler and posts publicly as such. The poll asks, should Atomwaffen Division do private security for Unite the Right rally on August 12th? 65% voted yes. For those unaware, Atomwaffen Division is an underground armed group in the U.S. Who has as its explicit stated purpose of manufacturing nuclear weaponry and carry out clandestine attacks with the goal of literal ethnic cleansing. They have many convictions under their belt of murder and manufacturing explosives, yet the vast majority of the group remains at large. The poll could be taken as a quote-unquote joke, much like the jokes about running over people leading up to August 12 last year. But if you go through the comments, a lot of people are taking it seriously. And you only need one individual to take jokes like these seriously for people to end up dead again. Whether it's because of city negligence or other reasons, or the acts of white supremacists themselves. On August 12th this year, if you allow the court to file the injunction to have the rally happen, we have a very, very severe risk of this happening again. There are highlighted comments and notes throughout the document. The one I want to call out publicly is on page 13. There is a comment from a Dave Shine where he claims to be in on the rally plans for August 12th and mentions quote-unquote private security. If I'm not mistaken, Kessler or this Dave guy are making these plans over what is still a revoked permit without consulting the city, right? Does that sound right? They haven't consulted about private security?
They don't have a permit.
Okay, they don't have a permit, right. So the last two pages go into the possible identity of Dave through publicly available documents. They might give you a sneak peek of who your police contact will be if you lose the injunction hearing. Might as well prepare now. All of this assumes that you're approaching this summer differently, and the arrest, Corey Long's conviction, all of that is showing that you're not, so you're leaving it to us to defend our city again.
So, I was just saying, Mr. Luis, thank you for the information. One thing I think it's important for us to do, as we've heard over and over, is not do what we did last year. So, with our new police chief, would love if we could hand this information over. Would you like a copy, Chief Brackney, with her being here? Do you have extra copy, or is this just for? Did you only have enough for us? Okay.
Yes, sir. I want to say thank you. Also, you're absolutely right. There was a lot of stuff given us in sessions like this last year. As I've talked about, it was extremely frustrating trying to figure out what met the constitutional standards that then existed. It's my belief that these constitutional standards are evolving now as the courts are starting to understand how to balance public safety against the so-called freedom of speech, and what qualifies as a so-called credible threat is something that was very frustrating here, because general threats don't oftentimes, as I learned talking to the FBI, qualify. However, what you've put here, listen, what you've put here, this is really useful. This Damien Dark saying, I say arm everyone with guns and march together openly. When the left shows up, just form ranks and aim. Don't have any bullets in the gun. Use it for intimidation factor. That violates Virginia Code 18.2282, which is pointing, holding, or brandishing firearms. So it looks to me like that's a clear description of a planned criminal act, which was more difficult to have last time. So I would please give us everything we can. We'll do everything we can to get it to the right people. Thank you for the research. It's appreciated. That's all. That's I can say. Thank you.
Mayor Walker, may I ask Ms. Beauregard a question? So, Ms. Beauregard, could we please get a follow-up from our police department?
Yes, ma'am. We'll
Thank
make
you.
sure
To
Chief Brackey
research
gets-
this and track this?
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
Okay. Any other comments? All right, Jeff Snyder. Thank you.
Jeff Snyder, city resident. I'm here to oppose the blasting along Quarry Road and to second the remarks of the young man that was right over there who read the letter of a very experienced person who brought many important points to your attention. Thank you very much. I commend the council for giving us the time to bring this issue together in July. I would ask that you ask the city utilities experts that you have for sewer, water, gas, and to be here for those meetings so they can add what they know. Also, have your somebody from the assessor's office that would address the issues involved with tax revenue decreases and problems associated with the degradation of properties within who knows how far from the blasting site. And I would ask that you contact the Virginia Department of Transportation to be present as well, because Route 20, as it snakes down the road there towards the I-64, is a problematic piece of road and sits on that same vein of rock. And you don't need more problems on that curve. And I think they're probably within the distance criteria for concern. Thank you very much.
Okay. So thank you all for your comments. Do you have a
I have
comment?
one quick.
Okay.
Response. To the woman who made the comment about the mayor system that we have, I just wanted to add, for the sake of the public discussion about it, there's another proposal that was made by a resident in town named David Repass, who's a retired political science professor, where he wrote a Daily Progress editorial where he said there's a spectrum of possibilities here, and he said we could tweak the system so that the mayor would be elected directly, which a lot of Virginia cities do, that have not gone as far as Richmond and had a strong mayor system with all the administrative and budgetary powers, which is certainly something we can talk about as well. And they said that council and the mayor could have more power over staff. So they would have, right now, the only direct power that council has is consulting in the hiring of the police chief and oversight over the city attorney and the staff that immediately reports to council. So you could expand that. You could have council and the mayor have more power within the staff relationships, but you could still have the council manager form of government. It's just another option to have on the table as we mull this over. What Delegate Toscano has said is this deserves a very serious community discussion. Councilor Bellamy is imparting some urgency to it and some focus, which is due. And I would urge everybody to look at this proposal in the Daily Progress by Professor Repass, because it is a very thoughtful option that could at least change some significant things and restore some more accountability that we don't have right now.
Say that again.
Okay, so break. Thank you all. 10 minutes, so that's.
Try to have some more.